Good morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Live. My name is Wasiwe Ngobo for the Sports Desk. Now, as you've heard from yesterday all the way to this morning, the South African Tourism Board will, of course, around 11 a.m. this morning, brief the media on the reported shirt sleeve sponsorship deal between it as well as EPL side Tottenham Hotspur. This is said to be in the region of 1 billion rand over the next 3 years. To help us talk about the sporting part of this deal, we've roped in sports business expert Squili Gumete, as well as SAFM sports anchor and analyst Thabiso Musia. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We haven't seen you since the World Cup.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So let me start this conversation with you. I mean, when we look at a deal of this nature, obviously our reference point will be what happened in Rwanda with Arsenal as well as PSG. And of course, we saw David Luiz traveling to Rwanda, promoting the country during his Arsenal days. And Sergio Ramos, we've seen also going to Rwanda, promoting the country. And it's also a deal that involves some traveling, some football clinics, a sharing of football ideas and coaching ideas. Typically, what would a deal of this nature actually encompass?
Yes, I think you've hit the nail on the head. But firstly, it's not the first time that something like this has come to the fore. In 2021, actually, SABC Sport picked up that SA Tourism was about to get into a partnership with Chelsea, which is strikingly similar to what they are getting into now with Tottenham Hotspur. But they did pull out at the last minute, and it was a bit less than what is being spoken about right now. But you've mentioned Visit Rwanda. And with Visit Rwanda, there's more to it than just the money. There's a football element of it also. Arsenal would send coaches to Rwanda every year to coach the coaches and give coaching clinics, so they're giving back to football in that country. And the same thing as PSG, and they would also send players so that they can share knowledge. And we've seen that with this deal that's being talked about now with Tottenham. There's also an opportunity for Tottenham to come to South Africa and also hold coaching clinics. And if you remember the last time Spurs was here, or when they used to come here with the Vodacom Challenge, they would play against some of the teams here in South Africa, and they even picked up the former Bafana captain OJ Mabizela, who actually impressed them and went to go play in the English Premier League, even though he didn't last long. So from a football point of view, there are a lot of benefits to something like this. It's not just about money being thrown into a club and then that's it, and there are no benefits for the country. So I think maybe when more details start to emerge of this deal, because right now what's been out there is basically one angle, which seems to have been also very politicized. But I think from a football part of it also, there could be huge benefits for the country from what we've seen in their partnerships with Arsenal and Rwanda, as well as with PSG.
And Squilly, you've mentioned this a couple of times, that the devil is actually in the detail of the deal. Yeah. And it's the detail that we actually don't know at the moment. And a lot of people are up in arms. 1 billion rand, it's so much money. South Africa is going through so much. But the department is not actually going to be utilizing funds that are not allocated for this specific purpose for international marketing. Just talk us through that a little bit so that people at home can actually understand that this is a budget that is set specifically for this purpose.
So absolutely. So one of there's two markets that SA Tourism is responsible for. One is the domestic market. So whatever happens here and the different campaigns they do, and those campaigns are being broadcast in the local media and local media platforms like the SABC and other similar platforms. The other is international marketing and international tourists. That's what they've been doing from the beginning of time. So the amount of money they're spending there is already being spent. So effectively, what's happening here is that, from what we can see, is that SA Tourism have decided that as a different way of approaching and engaging our global audience, instead of sending our money to our office in China or the UK, and they do that to the local media, we're going to take one big media platform, which is the Premier League, and our route into that is Spurs, and effectively we'll then get access to 600 million homes that take the Premier League around the world every week in, week out. So that effectively is what's happened here from an explanation point of view, just to clarify why this is not something new or something weird. It is something that is being done. Essentially, I did a quick research. Like 14 of the 32 teams that were playing in Champions League have a tourism and travel sponsor of some kind.
And I mean, it speaks to what SA Tourism is trying to do now. But Tabi, so you touched a little bit about the last time Tottenham Hotspur were around, they signed OJ Mabizela, and those are the type of benefits we want to look at. I mean, also in terms of facilities, those Tottenham Hotspur facilities are amongst the best in the world, and this is the exposure essentially we hope to be getting throughout this deal and as a result of the deal. But what other alternatives would you say could exist to almost get a similar outcome to this from a sporting and footballing perspective? Because I mean, almost like injecting funds into a cash-stripped SAFA probably wouldn't do it for us.
Well, there have been partnerships in the past with clubs from Europe actually coming into South Africa to partner with our clubs, like Ajax Amsterdam, for example. They came to partner with Ajax Cape Town, and for years they were able to produce top quality players like Benny McCarthy and Steven Pienaar that actually went overseas and made names for themselves overseas. Even with Tottenham, this will not be their first foray into the country besides the Vodacom Challenge, but they've had partnerships with a SuperSport United, for example, where we saw Bongani Khumalo also go over to Tottenham Hotspur, and we saw some youngsters also get opportunities to go and train with Tottenham Hotspur. But this one is different because it is SA Tourism marketing the country or advertising the country to an international audience, because like Squilly was saying earlier on, I mean, Spurs is a global brand. They're probably on global TV 2 or 3 times a week, you know, and the message will reach so many people. And we've seen with Rwanda when they came out with their reports of how their deal has done with Arsenal, for example, and I think after the first year or two there was a 17% increase in tourism revenue. There was a 22% increase in tourists from Europe, and they were also obviously trying to improve the image of the country because of their terrible history that they have, and it looks like it's worked wonders for them. So I do think there are a lot of benefits to this if the projections are right. I think maybe there is a lack of trust from South Africans with government, and you can understand because of what's happened in the past. So I think if there's more transparency here and more clarity about what the projections are and what the return of investment is that they're hoping to get, I think it could be an acceptable deal, and I think it could be a deal that can work not only for the country but most importantly for the football to form these partnerships, because at the moment our football is not in a good state, and I think we need all the expertise and all the knowledge and all the help we can get, especially when it comes to initiatives like coaching the coaches, you know, more than even the players, making sure that that knowledge stays in the country, and these coaches for years can continue to instill that knowledge in young players.
And Squilly, what Thabiso touches on now, just in terms of our football not having the right amounts of exposure, and one looks at this and says, well, one good thing is the fact that there's a realization how sport can be utilized to actually generate some sort of revenue for the country. And he's touched also on the numbers, but how do we actually measure in terms of there's a rise now, X amount percentage in tourism in South Africa? How do we then attribute to say this is as a result of this partnership with the sponsorship, sleeve sponsorship of Tottenham?
So they would have trends on how they've grown the tourism arrivals, as an example, over the years. And if they start doing something like this, and suddenly there's an immediate jump, you could then make the deduction. But also they then do different types of research. So whenever you go to different websites, people will say, how did you hear about us? So when tourists come in here, for example, part of the forms they fill up is, how did you hear about us? And people say, well, on TV, or actually I was here for the World Cup a couple of years back, etc., etc. So more and more people are probably going to start saying, well, I was in Indonesia and I saw in the Premier League match that South Africa is actually an interesting country to go to. So there's a way of measuring this from a media exposure and global standing for South African tourism as a destination, but also there's a measure of the economic benefits and the impact of that. So if Spurs does come here for pre-season training, for example, and they typically travel with 10,000 fans, those are 10,000 fans that suddenly come into a country and spend £10,000 that would not have gotten
euros
here if it wasn't for that. And so that's part of how something like this would begin to pay for itself and its impact be measured. And
we've seen how British fans like to come to South Africa, especially in their winter and in our summer. Even now with the cricket going on around the country, I mean, the Bami Armies here, there are a lot of British fans that come here to spend a lot of money. And in 2019, I actually went to the Emirates to go watch Arsenal. And when some of them found out that I was from Africa, they were asking about Rwanda, most importantly. And they thought that actually Johannesburg was very close to Rwanda. And I had to explain explain to them that
Yeah.
it's another country altogether, you know. So those are the kind of things that I think Squilly is talking about that will just put South Africa on the map and on everybody's lips, if the deal is right.
If the deal is right,
Yes.
and it's all in the detail.
Correct.
Squilly, just as I wrap up with you, perhaps just touching on what Tabis is saying, speaking about being asked about, is Rwanda close to Johannesburg? Isn't that the difference, though, that at that time, Rwanda wasn't a country that a lot of people were exposed to and had knowledge of, and maybe others would argue that the case is a bit different with South Africa. I mean, people around the world do know South Africa. They are aware of South Africa. And as you answer that for me also, is Tottenham the right partner for SA Tourism for this? A Man United, a Arsenal, or even a Chelsea, could that have been a better option?
So, first things first. So, South Africa is obviously clearly more well known, I think, than Rwanda for different reasons. But remember that this is a platform to deliver messages. So we're not just now saying South Africa. We're saying come to South Africa or come to our, if we've got a big event that we're doing, we could use that to deliver a message. So we're able to deliver different messages to global audiences. Is Tottenham the right club? Well, the top 5 clubs already have a travel and tourism partner. So that door was probably shut on them, and the next available club was Tottenham. But people must remember this is access to the Premier League, not just Tottenham.
Entirety.
The Premier League, every time Tottenham plays and the Premier League is beamed to homes around the world, that's what people would see. So whether it was Burnley or any other club, it still gives you access to the Premier League. Of course, Tottenham is one of the top 6 clubs. So it's not a bad idea, certainly in terms of what's available.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this morning. I think we have enlightened a lot of our viewers at home, and perhaps we'll see a little bit of a change in terms of what the tweets were looking like this morning in terms of that question of the day. We were, of course, joined by Thabiso Mosia, SAFM sports anchor and SABC sports analyst, as well as Squilly Gumede, a sports expert here in South Africa.